Now welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at and discussing the results of the poll that asked, what did you think of the first two episodes of Ahsoka? As usual, then I'll also be reading and responding to some of the comments left on the poll. And so let's waste no time and get right to those results, where we'll see that 22% of people said that the first two episodes of Ahsoka were amazing. 44% then said they were pretty good for the most part. 23% then thought this was not bad, but not a great start either, which left 6% to say they were bad or disappointing, and a final 5% to say they were just awful. And honestly here, I think these are some fairly impressive results for the show. I mean, yeah, they could be better. There is obviously room for improvement. But this ain't bad when you consider I can, of course, be rather critical of Disney Star Wars. I'll call it out when I think it's bad. Which means a lot of people who watch my videos and thus get these polls in their feed and partake in them, they also tend to be people who are, you can say, critical of Disney Star Wars. So when you look at this and see that 2/3 of people rated it good or better, and that only some 10% rated it as pretty bad or worse, well again, I'd say those are some pretty decent results or scores from a crowd that isn't prone to automatically rate everything great just because it's Star Wars. And on the flip side, isn't going to rate it automatically bad either. Though, sure, there may have been some of that. It's likely that at least some of those awful ratings could or do come from people who didn't even watch these episodes and simply wanted to rate them poorly just because they completely hate Disney Star Wars, which I do get. I get that there are those who have given up completely on Star Wars and still watch my videos for my takes, and I appreciate that. But anyway, not bad, and it looks like most people thought this was a promising start, or at least there is hope and potential here. So let's now move on to some comments and discuss this further, but not before once again just saying thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches these or any of my videos. It is very much appreciated. Also a big thank you to those who support this channel or my other channel over on Patreon. And so now let's kick it off as we always do with the top rated comment left on the poll, which this time came to us from Derek Lopez, who said, "The opening where Baylan, Skull, and Shin infiltrated the Rebel ship to break out Morgan Elsbeth was probably my favorite part about the show. Honestly, I'm more interested in both Baylan and Shin than anything else. Rest in peace, Ray Stevenson." And yeah, that was a very Star Wars-like jump right into the middle of the action opening. A very solid opening, I think. Other than, well, maybe it being a bit odd that the captain let the shuttle land on his ship even though he knew it was some kind of trap. Though I guess he thought it'd be a few former Imperials pretending to be Jedi and not actual Jedi that had gone bad, so I will cut him a little bit of slack. Anyway, I do agree are bad guys, not that they're all bad it seems. It looks like Baylan has some regrets about what has happened to the Jedi. But anyway, they're pretty much the most interesting part of the show right now, which could simply be because we already know all the other characters, and thus far not a ton of new and different things have really been happening with them. We're kind of recapping or setting the stage for what comes next while telling us about this master and apprentice relationship that happened with Ahsoka and Sabine off screen or between the two shows. It's really just been them kind of making up to get to the start point of the adventure, which we know will happen. There's no real tension between Ahsoka and Sabine through all this, considering we know they're going to make up and look for Ezra. But while that's happening, I have been intrigued by Baylan and Shin, and also this mysterious Marok. I'm eager to hear Baylan's story, and I already can't help but wonder how things will unfold with him this season and how key or not key the character is meant to be in the grander story going forward, considering, of course, the sad and very unfortunate passing of Ray Stevenson, who I think was kind of born to play this sort of imposing dark Jedi-like character. I think he is absolutely nailing the vibe of it. But anyway, let's move on to this comment from Thundertron, who said, "They were pretty good for the most part. As a Rebels fan, it was great to see these characters in live action, as well as the many Easter eggs and nods to the show. My only gripes are that some of the characterization of Hera and Sabine felt off, and that we have added another to the list of people who survived getting run through with a lightsaber." We also then had this one from Jason Weber, who said, "Sabine being stabbed and then healed pretty much instantly made me pretty frustrated when thinking about Qui-Gon, and I also don't know if it was just me, but Sabine's character just felt off and a little too different from Rebels to have me thinking that this was the same character. Other than that, I thought the first two episodes were awesome and very cinematic." And yeah, I do feel like the characterization of Sabine might be a bit off. She's feeling more like a rebellious teenager now when she's like 30. than she did when she was an actual teenager in Rebels. She seemed to have pretty much everything together in that show and had done pretty much everything. Though I really think what they're trying to do is emphasize that the loss of Ezra still haunts her, that it's changed her, and that everything that she went through with Ahsoka and her training to be a Jedi, it seems, that it's bugging her a lot. Hera also, I feel like she isn't bad or anything. I just don't know that if you're someone who hasn't seen Rebels, if you get what her place is in all of this. I mean, you can tell there's some history between her and Ahsoka, and there's also history between her and Sabine, which, of course, there is a ton of history between those two characters. And with plenty of season to go, there's certainly time to get into more of this, into these relationships and how they are connected. But right now I can't help but feel like she's just there tagging along, or that's how you'd feel if you don't know who she is from Rebels. As for Sabine getting stabbed, I really wish they hadn't done that. I wish they would stop showing us people getting stabbed with a lightsaber and surviving. And yet, she immediately got medical attention, and that yes, things are different in this galaxy. They have things like Bacta and medical droids and technology that is far superior to ours. So it's not impossible that she could survive that. But I think there were other ways to show her definitively lose to Shin, which was kind of part of the point. The other point was to get her out of commission so she wouldn't tag along with Ahsoka and Hera when they went to Corellia, so that we could have the epic reunion there at the end. And again, I think there were just other better ways to do that than stabbing her with a lightsaber. Alright, and next up here we have this comment from Alum Vaughn, who said, I think Filoni is doing pretty good so far, but clearly those who have seen the Clone Wars and Rebels will have an advantage watching it. Ahsoka seems a bit too quiet and mysterious. She needs to be a bit more lively and animated. Sabine's character seemed a bit too immature for this time frame, though I liked her. It is very odd thinking of her as Ahsoka's Padawan. And I do think they're almost making Ahsoka a little too stoic. And I get that, yeah, you want to show the evolution of the character from the early days of Rebels, where she is very childish and energetic and all that sort of thing. And it does more align with what we see out of her in Rebels, not to mention after the kind of life she has lived. Some of that exuberance we saw when she was young would have, of course, been kind of killed off at this point. But I'd still like to see some of it. I'd like to see a hint of the Padawan Ahsoka from Clone Wars, even just a little trace of it. I do think she could be, no pun intended, a bit more animated here, a bit more lively. And maybe she ultimately will be. Maybe something will happen in the series to sort of release her from some of this pain in the past. Maybe an encounter with Anakin's Force Ghost will lighten her up a bit, if you will. But yeah, I do think she's maybe a little too stoic here, and it's bordering on grim. And I don't know that that endears her to newer viewers. Not in the same way it works for, say, a Din Djarin, who is also kind of grim. But he's a bounty hunter with a sketchy past. And Din also has Grogu to kind of give him a, shall we say, softer side. And I think it's through him, it's through Grogu, that people really come to like Din and the rough character that he is. Alright, and now let's move on to this comment from Z45HR4, who said, it was pretty good, but I couldn't help but feel like it was a bit lower intensity than I would want. The lightsaber fights in particular just lack that ferocity that you see in the prequels or in the animated series. It wasn't bad though. I'm still excited to see the upcoming episodes, especially once Thrawn comes in. And I actually thought, all things considered, the lightsaber fights were pretty solid. I mean, no, this isn't animated level lightsaber fights. That's kind of hard, if not impossible, to pull off in live action. Nor was this prequel level of intensity or choreography or scale or anything quite like that. I'm not saying these are on the same level as some of the best lightsaber fights we've ever seen, not even close. But I've been okay with them so far. Really interested to see the Baylan versus Ahsoka fight that we know is coming up, thanks to the trailers, and how that's gonna unfold and how that will look and how maybe epic that one will be. I've also liked the fact that there has been quite a bit of lightsaber action just in general. I mean, I don't need it necessarily, and or prove to me I can love Star Wars without a single lightsaber at any point. But it is nice to see them used quite often again. It's nice to get a show that really embraces their use and just kind of taps into that iconic imagery of Star Wars. Moving on then, our next comment comes to us from Emperor Cubone, who said, believe me, I love Rebels Season 5 as much as the next guy, but Ahsoka hasn't really been a focus of her own show yet. Guess we shouldn't be surprised after Boba Fett. It's mostly been Sabine. I love that character, but how are general audiences who only watched Mando gonna feel? I don't know, and again, as cool as it is to see Sabine with Hera and Chopper, I also do love Ahsoka as a character and would like to see her done justice too. So I've liked it so far, but a little more titular character, please. And I do agree with that. Thus far, Ahsoka hasn't exactly felt like the main character here. It has felt like this should be called Sabine, or maybe Master and Apprentice would have been a better title for it, since a focus has been put on that very important Star Wars relationship. And speaking of that, I do think there is another Master and Apprentice relationship that will get plenty of focus at some point as well. I do think there is going to be something big with Anakin and Ahsoka coming up, something that probably blows our mind, or at least tries to. Be that her seeing his Force ghost and having a conversation with it, though I don't know if that's going to blow our mind. It's cool, yes, but mind-blowing, we'll have to see. Or it could be something more grandiose, like going into the world between worlds and seeing alternate versions of events where she fought Anakin after his fall to the dark side and she couldn't save him, and maybe he strikes her down. Or maybe it's even something more crazy, like Marok being a clone of Anakin that she has to fight and kill, a theory my wife has been pushing over on my other channel for a while now. Anyway, I think there's some big things in store for Ahsoka. I think by the end we will understand why it is named after her, why she is the titular character. Plus, I just can't see Dave Filoni making an Ahsoka series and not aiming for something pretty profound with his character. Though I suppose that would certainly be a subversion of expectations if he didn't really feature her and kind of featured some of these other characters more. Okay, and next up here we have this comment from Ian Ali, who said, "The amount of MacGuffinism is a little worrying. Why does this ancient artifact from thousands of years ago point to where someone got banished 10 years ago? Did Ezra and Thrawn have a pit stop and drop it off? One could nitpick the volume, but if that's what it takes to make it cheap enough to have Star Wars TV, I'm okay with that. I was very pleasantly surprised to see Clancy Brown as Ryder again. This is the kind of fan service I like. If you know, you know, and moving on. It was great seeing the Phantom 2, and I can't wait to see the Ghost. And I'm going to be controversial here and say I want to see Jason. It's a good start now. Keep it up. We'll see." And yes, this has been the good kind of fan service. That being things that you'll notice if you are in the know and you'll smile at it and you'll enjoy it. But if you don't know, you're really not missing anything. That said, yeah, the ancient map leading to someone who went missing a few years ago could have been explained much, much better, I think. All they really needed to do was try to explain why they think or know that the Purrgil took Ezra and Thrawn to this other galaxy, and then to connect the Purrgil to the ancient race of people, maybe? Which they kind of try to do by showing them on the map and such. They show the Purrgil kind of circling the other galaxy. But I really think that's what they needed to do. They needed to show the connections better so that we understood why an ancient map takes us to someone from 10 years ago. Alright, and now on to a few final comments before wrapping it up, starting with this one from Player 1, who said, "It's more of a slow burn than The Mandalorian, with the story told over a season rather than each episode being its own thing, and I appreciate that just like I did with Andor. I think it's going to seem more worthwhile to watch once it's finished, as currently we've had no satisfying endings like we get with each episode of Mando." Then there's this comment from Taco Sauce 4x4 who said, "I actually haven't seen a second of Rebels or Clone Wars and I am still enjoying it. I definitely am missing some references, but for the most part it's good. I also played Jedi Fallen Order, so I think that'll help fill some background gaps." And finally, this one from Ken Bressler, who said, "Color me impressed. I was cautiously optimistic going into it, but the first 2 episodes have me hooked. Let's hope the rest of the season can keep that head of steam." Well, that's going to be all I got for this time, so now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think of the first 2 episodes of the Ahsoka series, or tell me what you think of what I or anyone else had to say about them here in this video. Whatever you choose to do, leave those comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.